The year my boyfriend was poorest, I broke up with him. Later, he became successful and used all means to marry me. Everyone said I was his true love, his most cherished wife. Until later, he brought home different women every night, breaking my heart and turning me into a joke in our circle. But I didn't cry or make a fuss. I quietly stayed in the study, never disturbing his affairs. He went mad, kissing me fiercely and asking in a low voice,
"Aren't you jealous?"
He didn't know I was sick. Every day he was crazily taking revenge on me. I was silently counting down how many days I had left to live. In the 3rd year of my marriage with Reggie Widener, he kept a young and beautiful college girl. Her name was Carly Irwin. She was pure and cute, the type Reggie liked. Reggie had been keeping her for more than half a year. Besides me, she was the woman who stayed by Reggie's side the longest. Friends advised me to be careful. They all said Reggie seemed to have real feelings for Carly Irwin. The first time I met Carly was on my birthday. I had a nosebleed since the morning. I went to the hospital for a checkup, and the doctor said I probably wouldn't live past next spring. I nodded lightly and whispered,
"It's okay."
I wasn't afraid of dying, but I was a little afraid of the pain. I heard there was an expensive medication that could make me live more comfortably. There wasn't enough money in my bank account, so I went to Reggie's company to find him. I happened to see Carly there too. She had just graduated and was working as Reggie's secretary. Reggie was in a meeting, and I sat outside waiting. Carly kept staring at me, whispering to her colleagues,
"Is she really the boss's wife? She's so ugly and withered, like she's about to die. You all said I look like her, but where? I'm much prettier than her."
The bright glass reflected my image, barefaced, wearing a bulky down jacket. Yes, I wasn't good-looking, and I was indeed about to die. A colleague tugged at Carly, whispering,
"That's because she's not dressed up. If she put on makeup, 10 of you together wouldn't be as pretty as her. And don't provoke her just because the boss spoils you. You don't know how much the boss loves her. If you make her unhappy, be careful the boss doesn't get rid of you."
Hearing that Reggie loved me very much, Carly pursed her lips in defiance and rolled her eyes at me. She brought me a cup of tea, gently asking,
"Mrs. Widener, how could the boss bear to make you wait so long? So strange, every time I came to see him before, no matter how busy he was, he would come to accompany me first. He said I was the most important. I thought he was this considerate to other women too."
She smiled sweetly, her smile very much like mine when I was young. I thought about it, and Reggie was indeed different with Carly. He had countless lovers, using them as tools to spite me, bringing different women home every night, testing my reaction again and again. Reggie never lingered with them for long, maybe a day or two, maybe 10 days or half a month, but he always got bored quickly. Except for Carly Irwin, Reggie kept her outside, having meals, shopping, and watching movies with her. They were like an ordinary, loving couple. Reggie gave her money and love. I looked at Carly, smiled at her, and gently asked,
"If you're so important to him, how can Reggie bear to let you be the hidden mistress? You should persuade him to divorce me and marry you soon."
Carly's face changed dramatically. She was furious, lowering her voice to curse me.
"The one who's not loved is the mistress. You're the one who's extra. You're just relying on having met Mr. Widener a few years earlier than me. But now you're old and ugly. What do you have to compete with me?"
Her colleague probably feared I'd get angry, quickly pulling her arm to drag her away. Actually, I didn't mind. I had long told myself I wouldn't get angry for Reggie, nor would I be sad for him. I wouldn't compete with other women for him. He wasn't worth it. Carly was pulled by someone, lost her balance, and fell to the ground, shattering the teacup in her hand. Her palm was deeply cut, and blood flowed everywhere. Reggie saw Carly injured through the conference room glass. Everyone was watching as he threw down the documents in his hand, pushed the door open, and walked over, scooping Carly into his arms.
He cursed coldly. "Who the hell hurt her?"
The well-meaning colleague took 2 steps back, his face turning pale with fright. I sneered and said,
"I did it, and she deserved it."
Carly glared at me through her tears and shouted,
"Yes, I deserved it. Who told me to fall in love with someone I shouldn't have, to be called a mistress and a homewrecker? But Mr. Widener, as long as you love me too, I will stay by your side forever, and no one can separate us."
She cried so adorably that even saying such absurd things seemed brave and determined. Reggie was amused by her, wiping her tears away and coaxing her.
Baby, you've turned into a little crying kitten.
He truly treated her differently. I lowered my eyelids, too lazy to look any longer, and only said to Reggie,
For my birthday this year, I want $50,000.
"It's so funny, we are married, yet we don't even have each other's contact information. Apart from asking for money, I never take the initiative to reach out to him. Before we got married, we agreed that he wanted my body, and I wanted his money. Reggie has always hated me for being a gold digger. But in the past, as long as I asked, no matter how much, he would always give it to me, often more than I asked for. Except this time, he looked at me with a cold smile and said slowly,
You want money, fine. But Colleen Punter, lower your noble head and apologize to Carly first."
Reggie wanted to use $200,000 to buy away my dignity and an apology for Carly. This was the first time he used money to humiliate me for another woman. I slowly clenched my fists and laughed softly. Enduring the sudden surge of pain in my body, I turned and left. I didn't want the money anymore. I suddenly became very curious. Reggie, if one day you knew that this money could let me live a little longer, if you knew how much suffering I endured before I died, what expression would you have? I went home alone, curled up in bed in pain, sweating profusely. I took some sleeping pills and lied to myself. If I fell asleep, it wouldn't hurt. In a daze, I had a dream. I dreamed of when I was 20, Reggie was very poor, but he loved me very much. That year on my birthday, we passed by a coffee shop and saw a couple sitting by the window. The girl was holding a small, snow-white cake that looked delicate, delicious, and expensive. I still remember it was snowing heavily that day. I held a small pile of snow and smiled at Reggie, asking him,
Reggie, doesn't this pile of snow look like a cake?
Reggie gritted his teeth, hugged me tightly, and didn't let me see his eyes, which had secretly reddened. 3 days later, he appeared under my dormitory building with a big cake. Buying a whole cake cost $258. And he had to hand out 3,000 flyers in the wind and snow to earn just $100. I looked at the frostbite on his fingers and cried pathetically. Looking up at him, I shouted,
Reggie, your hands can be used for studying, for writing, but never for ruining them just to make me happy.
I said, I don't deserve such an expensive cake. Reggie frowned and immediately refuted me. He said,
Colleen, you are the best girl in the world. You deserve all the good things in this world.
That day, I cried while eating the entire cake. After a long time, I couldn't remember its taste anymore. I only knew that since that day, I never had a cake that tasted better than that one. I slept for a long time, and in a daze, I heard my phone ringing. I answered the call and heard Reggie on the other end calling me.
Colleen.
I smiled lightly and sweetly called him.
Reggie, it's snowing heavily, I want to eat cake.
Before he could respond, I turned over and fell back into a deep sleep. I slept until midnight and woke up hungry. When I went to the living room to find something to eat, I discovered that Reggie had actually come back. He bought a big house for Carly. They live together there. Carly cooks for him, makes him happy, and waits for him to come home. Reggie is doing well, he hasn't been back here in a long time. He lazily leaned against the floor-to-ceiling window, a cigarette in his mouth, staring straight at me. I lowered my eyes and walked past him, but he grabbed me. He frowned and softly asked,
Why have you lost so much weight?
His tone was gentle, as if he still loved me. I was stunned for a moment, then shook off his hand and cursed at him.
Reggie Widener, are you crazy?
He looked at his now empty palm, and his face slowly turned cold. When I reached the dining table and saw a cake full of candles on it, I realized that the phone call wasn't a dream. I had said I wanted to eat cake, and Reggie bought it. What is this? A truce? But I was already close to dying, I no longer needed a cake or Reggie. I grabbed the cake and threw it into the trash can. Reggie gritted his teeth and pressed me against the wall. He cursed viciously.
Colleen, are you messing with me?
I laughed and admitted.
Yes, Reggie Widener, I am messing with you. So what? I said I wanted cake, and you bought cake. Why are you still so pathetic like before?
I deliberately stabbed at his heart, watching as Reggie's face turned completely cold. He extinguished the cigarette harshly and dragged me into the bedroom, throwing me onto the bed. Reggie must have been driven mad. He acted like a wild beast out of control, roughly tearing off my nightgown. I was scared and clenched my fist to hit him.
Reggie Widener, you bastard. Don't touch me. I find you disgusting.
He clamped my legs, preventing me from struggling, and bit my neck, making me cry out in pain. He cursed into my ear.
Colleen, would it kill you to give in to me? Do you know how long I've waited for you to comfort me? Do you know how happy I was when you said you wanted cake? And then you treat me like a fool?
He lifted his head, his eyes bloodshot, staring at me. I held back my tears and glared back at him. In the dim room, neither of us spoke, neither willing to admit defeat first. Reggie leaned down, getting closer and closer to me, about to kiss my lips when his phone suddenly rang. It was Carly calling. Reggie paused but still answered. I heard Carly crying and asking him,
Mr. Widener, are you really going to leave me for Mrs. Widener? You clearly like me. I'm at a bar now, I drank a lot, and a man is harassing me. I'm so scared, can you come and take me home, please?
Reggie didn't speak, he just stared at me, smiling coldly, and softly commanded.
Colleen, beg me. Beg me to stay. As long as you beg me, I won't go.
He seemed to have forgotten. A long time ago, I had also put down my pride and begged him.
Reggie, can we have a calm conversation? Can we stop fighting? Can we be together properly? Can you treat me a bit better?
That day, Reggie stared at me coldly and said with a smile,
Colleen, you're not worthy.
Those 3 words have been stuck in my heart ever since. Until today, I can finally return the words exactly. I grabbed his collar and said word by word,
Reggie Widener, you're not worthy.
Reggie was silent for a moment, then suddenly laughed at himself. He put the phone to his ear and told Carly.
Wait for me. I'll come pick you up.
Without another glance at me, he got up and slammed the door as he left. The next day, photos of Reggie fighting with another man over Carly spread throughout the circle. This was the first time his affairs with another woman became widely known. There were several reporters guarding the entrance of the house, and when I went out, they pestered me with questions. Reggie's company had developed rapidly in recent years and held significant power in the capital circle. He was young, wealthy, and handsome, famous online, and often trending. A woman asked me,
Mrs. Widener, do you have anything to say about Mr. Widener and Carly Irwin?
I continued walking forward without looking back, retorting,
One is a man who cheats on his wife, and the other is a woman who knowingly becomes the homewrecker. What do you want me to say?
The woman chased after me and continued to ask.
But I heard that when Mr. Widener was at his poorest, you dumped him for money. Later, when he became successful, you used emotional blackmail to marry him by any means necessary. Now that Mr. Widener has found true love, and he and Carly are a perfect match. It's you who insists on occupying the position of Mrs. Widener, calling others the homewrecker. Don't you think you are the one bullying others?
I stopped and looked at her with a cold smile, grabbing the work badge hanging on her chest. She was an intern reporter, and behind her work badge was a student ID from South Mountain University. I calmly asked her,
Are you Carly's friend? Back then, it was Reggie who used all means to marry me. Do you think I wanted to marry him? Everyone in the circle knows this. Don't you know? Or are you here to splash dirty water on me to help your friend rise to the top as the homewrecker?
Her expression changed, and she hastily grabbed her work badge back, righteously arguing.
I am indeed her friend, but as a reporter, everything I say is objective and fair. If you really didn't want to marry Mr. Widener, then why don't you divorce him now that he loves someone else?
I smiled and was about to speak when I suddenly started having a nosebleed, looking quite embarrassed. Someone mocked me, saying,
Mrs. Widener says she doesn't care and that she was forced to marry Mr. Widener, yet she's so anxious that she's having a nosebleed?
I extended my fingertips and wiped the blood off my lips. Calmly, I said,
I'm not anxious. I'm sick and dying, and I've been having frequent nosebleeds lately.
The crowd suddenly fell silent, and no one laughed anymore. Only that woman continued.
Stop pretending. It was just a nosebleed and you're acting sick and pitiful. I really can't stand women like you. To steal a man, you'll use any shameless means, making us women look bad.
After saying that, she swung her ponytail and walked away. Her back was as annoying as Carly's. The video of me being surrounded by reporters quickly trended. Reggie responded publicly, saying,
I will never divorce. Stop disturbing my wife.
That afternoon, Carly's reporter friend was fired. Many netizens cursed me.
This woman is disgusting. If she didn't want to marry Mr. Widener, she shouldn't have. It's not like someone held a knife to her neck, forcing her to marry, acting like she has no choice.
They say she's Mr. Widener's true love, but I think she's just a hypocrite. Mr. Widener defends her so much, I'm jealous.
And this woman dumped Mr. Widener for money before, and now she married him for money.
She says she doesn't want to, but she's just pretending to be high and mighty while being a hypocrite.
Suddenly, a netizen chimed in.
All of you shut up. If you don't know the truth, then shut the hell up.
Everyone started chasing after him, asking what the truth was. This matter, to be honest, is quite common. That year, my mother was diagnosed with a terminal illness. The doctor said the disease had a high genetic probability. Not only could I get seriously ill at any time, but if I got married and had children, my children would also likely be at risk. The day my mother had her outbreak, she bled a basin full of blood from her nose. She lost so much blood that she was in a coma for 3 days. When she woke up, she told me to break up with Reggie. I stared blankly at her and whispered,
Mom, he won't despise me.
It was like I was speaking to my mom and myself. Mom gently held my hand and nodded, saying,
I know, he's a good man.
She paused and smiled.
You two have been dating since high school. He waited for you at the alley every morning with his bicycle. Do you think I didn't know? One time, I saw him buy a meat bun for you as breakfast. He had $12 in his pocket. The meat bun cost $10, and with the remaining $2, he bought 2 cups of soy milk, one for each of you. You were greedy and naive back then. He lied that he had eaten, and you believed him, happily eating the meat bun. Poor little Reggie. His parents divorced, and no one wanted him. He lived like an orphan with the meager living allowance he got each month. $12 might have been his daily living expense, and he spent it all on you without a second thought. At that moment, I thought my daughter was lucky to find such a good boy. He's good at studies, a good person, good in every way. It's because he's so good that I feel sorry for him.
That year, Reggie's grandmother was also hospitalized. He grew up with her and had a deep bond. To treat his grandmother, he was frantically busy every day. My mom said Reggie's wings were too fragile. Carrying his grandmother and me, he couldn't fly. I clenched my fists and, after a long time, trembled and said,
Mom, I can't bear to leave him.
With those words, my tears fell like rain. Thinking about what happened 10 years ago still makes me sad. I bought my mom's favorite persimmons, preparing to visit her grave one last time. I'm dying and need to tell her that I won't be coming back anymore. Before going, I first went to Reggie's company to get something from him. When my mom was still alive, she always liked Reggie. That year, she wasn't sick yet, and Reggie and I were deeply in love. My mom went to the temple to pray and got 2 lucky dolls. One boy doll had Reggie's birthday inside, and one girl doll had my birthday inside. For safety, health, and for the loved ones to stay together forever. Mom asked me to give the lucky doll to Reggie. Reggie didn't want the boy doll, he insisted on taking the girl doll. He said the girl doll with red cheeks looked just like me, adorably ugly. He said seeing her was like seeing me. He liked seeing me. That doll is still on Reggie's desk. I'm afraid that after I die, Reggie will throw it away like trash. That was something my mom bought for me, and I need to take it back to put it in front of her tombstone, to accompany her for me. When I arrived at the company, Reggie was watching the video I recorded this morning, in which I had a nosebleed and said I was dying. When he saw me, he threw his phone aside, said nothing, and asked nothing. I saw that the spot on his desk where the lucky doll used to be was empty. I frowned and asked him,
Where's my lucky doll?
Carly chased after me and heard me asking for the doll. She smiled and said,
A few days ago, I cut my hand, and Mr. Widener was very distressed. He said he couldn't bear for me to be hurt, so he gave me that lucky doll. He also said the doll looked like me, clumsy, but he liked it very much. Mrs. Widener, do you think he's lying? I'm so pretty, how could I look like such an ugly doll?
I clenched my fist tightly and glared at Reggie, questioning him.
How could you give my stuff to someone else? That was something my mom got for me. How could you give it away?
He laughed, infuriating me, and said,
That doll was yours? Sorry, I forgot. I thought it was something worthless.
Before he could finish, I picked up the ashtray on the desk and threw it at him. Reggie didn't dodge, the crystal ashtray hit his forehead and drew blood. Carly screamed and cursed at me.
Are you crazy? You hit someone over a broken doll.
She turned and ran out, quickly coming back with my lucky doll in her hand. She threw the doll at me and yelled,
Here's your stuff, take it. A cheap thing that no one cares about, do you think I want it? Stop acting crazy, take your stuff and leave.
The ceramic doll fell to the ground and shattered into pieces. I saw my name and my birthday, broken into several pieces, just like my life, probably beyond repair. I suddenly felt that I was really going to die. But I didn't want to die yet, I hadn't seen my mom. I was afraid she would keep waiting for me if she couldn't see me. My head buzzed, and I slapped Carly, screaming like a madwoman.
That was my mom's thing. It means a lot to me.
Before I finished speaking, tears started falling. I reached out to grab Carly, but Reggie grabbed my wrist and stopped me. My eyes burned, and I stared at him, crying and then laughing. I cursed him.
You know I'm dying, and you're still bullying me. Reggie Widener, you're such a jerk.
He wiped my tears and asked back.
First it was the cake, now you're dying. Colleen Punter, do you think it's fun to mess with me? You don't need to cry before me, I won't feel sorry for you anymore.
Before he finished speaking, a drop of blood fell on his hand. I had another nosebleed, more severe than before. My legs went weak, and I was in so much pain that I couldn't stand, falling straight down. Reggie caught me, shouting.
Call an ambulance.
He was helpless, watching as more and more of my blood flowed, staining his white shirt red. I was unconscious, but I could hear Reggie crying, asking over and over.
Why won't the bleeding stop? Please, stop the bleeding. Colleen, please, don't scare me.
I could smell the disinfectant in the hospital. I heard the doctor tell Reggie.
She could have lived until next spring, or maybe even longer. But she said she had no money left and didn't want to continue treatment. Now her condition is uncontrollable, and there's no need to continue treatment.
Reggie retorted.
So you're saying my wife is going to die?
Before the doctor could respond, he suddenly raised his voice and cursed angrily.
I want my wife to live. If you can treat her, do it. If you can't, get out and find someone who can.
That day, Reggie almost trashed the hospital room. He assembled countless expert teams, saying he would spend any amount of money to keep me alive. But incurable diseases can't be treated with money alone. Reggie was stubborn and wouldn't listen to reason. He wanted to discharge me and take me abroad for treatment. He had money and power, and no one in the hospital dared to stop him. Until my best friend, Betty Hinson, showed up with my will. A long time ago, I had notarized everything, giving her the authority to make decisions for me. I said that if one day I was lying in bed, unable to move, eat, or drink, just let me go peacefully. She knew I was most afraid of pain. Betty slapped Reggie and pointed at his nose, cursing.
If you had so much money, why didn't you use it earlier? Now you want to show off, Mr. Widener? It's too late. She's dying. You can't take her anywhere. Wherever I am, she will be.
Reggie stared at the will in Betty's hand, stunned. After a long time, I heard him say in a choked voice.
Betty Henson, let me take her away. I'm begging you. Believe me, she can survive. She can. She won't die. If she dies, what will I do?
Betty looked at him calmly and coldly scolded.
A man with a heart of stone like you can live well without anyone. Stop pretending to be sentimental. It's disgusting to yourself and to others.
She pushed Reggie aside, sat by my bed, and held my hand. As soon as she started speaking, tears fell. She asked me,
Do you really not want to live anymore?
Her crying made me sad too. I wanted to raise my hand to wipe her tears. I told her not to feel sorry for me. I just wanted to have a long, good sleep. Once asleep, it wouldn't hurt anymore. She asked me again.
Will you wake up one more time, please? You said you wanted to say a proper goodbye, so there would be no regrets when you leave. You haven't said goodbye to your mom, you haven't said goodbye to me. How could you bear to leave?
My tears fell alongside hers. The life monitor suddenly beeped, and the doctor hurriedly asked Betty to keep talking to me. He said I showed signs of awakening. That day, Betty held my hand, not even daring to drink water, and kept talking to me. She cried and laughed alternately, which was quite frightening. I originally planned to just die, but with her doing this, I felt it would be inappropriate not to wake up and comfort her. I fought with my already deteriorated body, and finally, in the middle of the night, I opened my eyes. For more than half a month after I woke up, Betty never left my side. She took care of me obsessively, feeding me, accompanying me to the bathroom, almost even helping me take off my pants. I was anxious to get better quickly, otherwise, Betty would go crazy. When she wasn't in the room, I tried going to the bathroom by myself. I could walk just fine without help. But after using the bathroom, my legs suddenly gave way, and I fell to the ground, hitting the sink and bleeding all over my face. I struggled to get up and accidentally pulled off the cloth covering the bathroom mirror. I looked up and saw a horrifying face. Reggie rushed in, held me in his arms, and wouldn't let me look anymore. He cursed quietly.
I just went to pay the bill for a moment. Where the hell did Betty go? Useless.
I couldn't push him away and interrupted him with a frown.
Stop badmouthing Betty in front of me. I don't like it. She has her own life, her family, and her job. Unlike me, who has nothing better to do and only causes her trouble.
Reggie shut his mouth and didn't say another word. He found a lot of tissues to wipe my face. Seeing the blood, his eyes reddened. He pretended to be calm and asked,
Why didn't you tell me earlier that you were sick? What do you have a mouth for? You could have gotten better, you know, Colleen. Why did you have to be strong and make things worse like this?
I said calmly.
Because I don't need you. I don't need your concern, and I don't need your company. So whether you knew I was sick or not is irrelevant to me.
Actually, I never deliberately hid my illness from Reggie. My medical report was right there on the table, in plain sight, but he never looked at it. During the days when I was gradually wasting away, Carly appeared by his side. That girl was younger, prettier, and more likable than me. Reggie started staying out all night because of her. So he never saw me collapsing countless times in pain, crying and begging the doctors to save me in my miserable state. Reggie carried me back to bed, and as he bent over, a tear fell on my face. He turned around and mocked me.
Yeah, Colleen, you're so amazing. You can dump me whenever you want, make me leave whenever you want. I know you don't need me. Fine, you don't need me.
After a long time, he continued in a choked voice.
But I need you.
I didn't say anything, closed my eyes, and pretended to sleep. Reggie still didn't know why I broke up with him before. On the day he came back successful and said he wanted to marry me. I had planned to tell him everything. I owed him a proper explanation. I wanted to tell him that the hurtful things I said during the breakup were all lies. He was great, he deserved the best girl in the world, they would have a happy family, healthy children, without the burden of poverty, without the torment of disease. But that girl wasn't me. I couldn't marry Reggie. I was afraid that if I got sick and was dying, he would cry for me, and I couldn't bear that. But before I could say anything, he interrupted me domineeringly. He smiled coldly at me.
Colleen Punter, I said I was going to marry you. I'm not asking your opinion. You'd better be grateful and accept it.
He said he didn't want to hear my explanation. I had made him so sad before, he wanted to make me even sadder, that was fair. I looked at his face and suddenly felt it was so unfamiliar. Maybe in the past, the kindness my mom and I showed him was really just wishful thinking. Maybe that year, I should have held on to him tightly, making him worry and be dragged down by a life of poverty. I was really too foolish back then, so foolish that I pitied myself. So, I said nothing, just said, I won't marry you, let's part ways peacefully. Reggie threatened me.
I heard that Betty Hinson used to work at a club serving drinks, right? She's quite lucky to have found a good boyfriend. What do you think? If that guy knew Betty used to be a hostess, would he still want her?
I was so angry I was trembling all over. I raised my hand and slapped Reggie, calling him a bastard. He pressed his tongue against the side of his face and smiled while pinching my chin.
Colleen, for revenge, I can do even worse things. If you don't believe it, you can try.
Reggie was ruthless. I didn't dare to try. I was afraid of ruining Betty's hard-won good life. I could only convince myself, after all, my life was already ruined, it didn't matter where it ended up. So, I agreed to the marriage. This revenge lasted a long time. Until Reggie got tired of playing and wanted to make up with me, but by then, I no longer loved him. I hurt myself so badly that I looked like a pig's head. There was no way to hide it from Betty. She got very angry, and for the next 2 days, no matter what I did, she would scold me. I cried from her scolding, covering myself with the blanket and shouting.
You women are so good at scolding people, you only bully me. If you have the guts, take me to my mom, you will definitely lose to her in scolding.
Betty didn't say anything for a long time. After a while, she touched my hair and gently coaxed me.
When you get better, I'll take you to see your mom, okay?
I knew she was lying to me, and I knew I wouldn't get better. But I didn't want her to worry, so I smiled and nodded, saying, okay. I started trying harder to recover, taking lots of medicine, getting so many injections that my arms were bruised all over, but I didn't cry out in pain. Reggie watched from the side, gritted his teeth, and slammed the door as he left. At night, I heard him arguing with Betty.
Colleen wants to see her mom. Don't you understand? What's the harm in letting her go once?
Betty cursed at him.
I think you just want her to die sooner. You bastard, you think she's lived too long, delaying your little mistress from taking her place, right?
I secretly wiped away my tears, hating myself for becoming a burden, making Betty so troubled. I no longer fussed about going out to see my mom, but my spirit slowly faded. I started to sleep a lot, my waking hours becoming fewer and fewer. I thought, it's time to say a proper goodbye to Betty. Maybe it was a final burst of energy, but in the next few days, my body hurt more and more, but my spirit got better and better. Probably hearing that I was recovering well, Carly couldn't stay still. She came to the hospital to find me when Reggie wasn't around. As soon as Betty saw her, she scolded.
You're not allowed in here, you better get out now, or I'll beat you so bad your mom won't recognize you.
Carly, however, did something unexpected. She suddenly knelt by my bed, crying and begging me.
Mrs. Widener, I'm pregnant with Mr. Widener's child. You're about to die. Please be a good person for once and give my child's father back to me.
She was 3 months pregnant, and I had been sick for 3 months. So, Reggie had been saying he needed me, but turned around and was living it up with another woman. Of course, what did he need a dying woman for? He was just lying to me. Luckily, I didn't believe him. Carly cried and reached out to pull my arm. I was so weak that I almost fell off the bed. Betty protected me and got several scratches from her. Suddenly someone grabbed Carly's hair and yanked her away. Reggie gritted his teeth, looking like he wanted to eat Carly alive, and cursed viciously.
Did I say if you dare to bother my wife, I'll kill you?
Carly's expression changed. Just as she was about to speak, Betty picked up a pillow and threw it at their faces, shouting in a breakdown.
Take this woman and get out.
Reggie dragged Carly away, saying that I should wait for him to come back and explain. Why would I wait for him? I didn't care him at all. Betty looked down at me and asked softly.
Colleen, are you okay? Are you feeling uncomfortable anywhere?
I clutched my chest, pretending to be very sad, and acted spoiled with her.
My heart hurts so much. I need to go shopping to feel better.
She was both amused and exasperated by me, but seeing that I was in good spirits lately, she agreed to take me out. I bought a roasted sweet potato and got into her small car. She has a cleanliness obsession and never lets anyone eat in her car. But I, pretending to be a patient, ate heartily in her car, dropping sweet potato crumbs on the seat. Betty gritted her teeth, pretending not to see. I directed her to drive to a high-end bridal shop. She's getting married in the spring, but I probably won't be around by then. I wanted to see her in a wedding dress. She didn't ask why I brought her here, just followed me into the store with teary eyes. We are best friends, we understand each other without words. I picked out a strapless satin wedding dress for Betty. While she was trying it on, I chose a bridesmaid dress for myself. After putting on my dress, I squeezed into her fitting room and took a selfie with her. As if I could still send her off to get married. I have good taste. Betty looked stunning in the wedding dress. I asked her if she wanted to buy it.
Buy what? It's ridiculously expensive. Just take a few more photos.
I smiled and left her to admire herself in the fitting room. I quietly went out and paid for the dress. She is the best girl in the world, and she deserves the most beautiful wedding dress. Enduring the cruel pain in my chest, I left the bridal shop and took a taxi to the cemetery to visit my mom. Betty, this time I'm really saying goodbye to you. No joking, no crying aloud. After Colleen died, Reggie always wondered. What was she thinking when she signed the body donation agreement? He never imagined that the day he dragged Carly away from the hospital would be the last time he saw Colleen. She calmly watched him and Carly struggle, just like usual, as if she didn't care at all whether he had fallen in love with another woman. But he always felt that it was at that moment when Colleen's heart truly died. So, she didn't wait for him to come back, nor did she give him a chance to explain. Her body was taken away by the hospital, and he couldn't even get a handful of her ashes. Colleen was really ruthless. He began to regret not telling her at the time that Carly was indeed pregnant, but the child wasn't his. That night at the bar, she drank too much and was dragged to the bathroom where someone assaulted her. By the time Reggie arrived, it was too late. Carly was a master at playing the victim. She said she got drunk because she couldn't handle alcohol, and if Reggie hadn't made her sad, she would never have encountered such a situation in her life. Reggie knew she was morally blackmailing him, but seeing her cry so pitifully, he suddenly thought of Colleen. His heart softened. He helped send the scumbag who assaulted her to jail and gave her money for an abortion. But he couldn't give her anything more. He always thought Carly was a very obedient girl. Although he had spoiled her temper, she was still very obedient. He never expected that he had raised a greedy snake who bit him hard when he was unprepared. He thought, when Colleen died, she probably hated him a lot. He also thought, it was clearly she who abandoned him first, so why did she have the right to hate him? In his dreams, he repeatedly asked Colleen.
Why did you break up with me back then? Actually, you loved me, right?
The next moment, Betty would protect Colleen behind her and point at his nose, cursing.
Where the hell were you before? When she wanted to talk, you didn't listen. Now that she's dead, you come to ask. Are you shameless?
Then Reggie would wake up from the dream. He wasn't afraid of Betty, he was afraid of hearing Colleen say she had long stopped loving him. His heart started having problems, and the doctor advised him not to be too sad. He said he wasn't, he was quite calm. He even started growing some plants. On the balcony at home, there were succulent plants that Colleen had raised. When he found them, they were all dead. He heard that succulents were very resilient, so he wanted to see if he could revive them. At night, when he came home, he would squat in front of those succulents and talk to them. He once saw Colleen doing the same on a sunny afternoon. She hugged her legs, squatting there. When she turned around, she saw him coming home with another woman in his arms. Reggie slapped himself hard. He began to alter his memories, adding his presence to all those lonely images of Colleen. He would hold her tightly, kiss her gently, and always be with her. Later, at a party, he beat up a scumbag who was cheating on his wife. His old friends all cursed at him.
Are you out of your mind? You yourself change women every few days, and now you call us scums? Why don't you go die?
He broke down and smashed up the room at the club, shouting that they were all talking nonsense. He clearly loved his wife the most. Until they pulled out a photo of him kissing Carly, he was stunned and fled as if escaping. He thought he must have been set up. He had to think about how to explain this to his wife. He didn't want to make his wife angry. Getting angry was bad for health. He rushed home, but as soon as he got off the elevator, he saw a pregnant woman standing at the door. This woman looked familiar, just like the one in the photo. A surge of fear rose in his heart. Had this woman already found his wife? Did she say something to upset his wife? He grabbed her hair and dragged her into the stairwell, cursing viciously.
Carly Irwin, you really aren't afraid of death.
He choked her neck, forcing her to retreat, until Carly lost her footing and fell down the stairs. Watching the blood stain the steps, Reggie smiled. Great, now no one could ruin his relationship with Colleen anymore. 2 weeks later, Reggie was sent to a mental hospital. His behavior was no different from a normal person. The only strange thing was that he always called a broken Lucky doll his wife. That doll was already very damaged, glued together with cracks all over, and a piece missing from its chest, as if it lacked a heart. Reggie always placed it by his bedside, smiling at it. He asked it,
Colleen, why haven't you come to see me? I miss you so much. And you? Do you miss me?
Moments later, his eyes would redden, and he would mutter to himself.
I forgot, a person without a heart can't understand missing.
He suddenly remembered. A long time ago, he had lost Colleen's heart.